the gavel. Start out with roll call. Michael Ahrens.
Present.
Bridget Davila is in a CCSF meeting and will be here as soon as she can. Christine is absent.
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. You
Yeah,
were
I'm
absent
just not
earlier.
on video yet. Yeah, I'll be on
Okay,
soon.
good.
Thank you.
Amy O'Hare.
Yeah.
Maurice Rivers. Maurice.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. I see you. Peter Tang. I mean, sorry, Mark Tang and Peter Tam. Mark Tang.
I'm here.
Okay. Peter Tam.
Present.
Okay. And my name is John Winston, and I am present. Barely. And we also have Lee Lutinsky from OEWD and Sung Young Hung from Planning Department. And from the developer team, we have Nora Collins from Avalon Bay and Kirsten Dischinger from Bridge Housing. Welcome all. So tonight's going to be a won't be a long meeting, I don't think. We're going to do an overview and general updates of, we're going to do a project pre-development status update. We're going to also have lots of general public comment, and that's going to be about it. And I understand that has the supervisor showed up yet? Okay.
No, I don't see her, but I will let you know when she joins.
Okay. Well, then in that case, Lee has some updates to give us for the remaining months of the CAC.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lee Lutensky from OEWD. It's nice to see everyone in the new year. I don't have too many updates. I just wanted to kind of have a quick discussion, I guess, if folks were interested in kind of the next steps. Oh, I see our supervisor has joined us. Hi, Supervisor Melgar. We were just gonna turn it over to you as soon as you're ready. So you let us know. We'd love to invite you to say a few words.
Thank you so much. So I just came by to say thank you to all of you, and particularly to Chair Winston and former Chair Lisa Spinelli for having shepherded us through this process, and to Michael Ahrens and Amy O'Hare and Peter Tam and Maurice Rivers and everyone who has been involved for the long haul. And Lee Lutensky, thank you so much for your, very skilled and patient work of explaining what was going on to me. And so I think that we are trying to figure out, I will be reaching out to all of you, certainly all the people that I listed and the folks who you think should be involved in the process to figure out what happens next, because I do think that, once the project gets under construction, we're going to need some method of communicating with the neighbors, and I think that especially when there is equipment and dust, we're going to need some way to let folks know what's going on, what to expect, who to call. And so I will be reaching out to you all and we will figure it out. But that's, my commitment. And then I just also wanted to say thank you so much for the work that you put in, for being such wonderful neighbors, and for caring about the community and our future as a city.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mirna. Appreciate it. And thank you for being here and taking care of the next few months. It's going to be really, actually kind of important. Lee, did you want to continue?
That's a great, thank you, Supervisor. And the only thing I did want to raise was just, talking with the group about the next few months. The CAC will sunset at the end of June. And so just understanding that we have about 3 months left of the formal CAC, I just wanted to have all the members and the community that are listening start to think about how you'd like to spend the next 3 months. In terms of that, we'll have at least one more meeting, and then, COVID regulations aside, we can think about whether we want to have a more informal type of gathering to celebrate all the work that you've all put in. In terms of topics,
But can I address that? Because you asked questions.
yes, absolutely.
The last 5 years have been a lot of work to get to where we are. And I see from what we're going to see in a few minutes is that this thing is going to continue and have a lot of important decisions for the next 2 years. As Supervisor Norman Yee, who lives right down the street from me here in Westwood Park, said, this is going to impact us very much. And as Supervisor has already said, she knows the neighbors are really key here. And we're going to want to know, because we back right on this construction site. And so we're going to want to know what's going on with respect to when the trucks are coming in and what's going to happen. And so I would suggest, as Supervisor Norman Yee said, this is not necessarily has to sunset the CAC at the end of this year. The Board of Supervisors can continue this. And I think at least Supervisor Yee at the last meeting said that that might have to happen if everything hasn't been resolved. And so I suggest that Supervisor, I think hopefully you can continue to consider not sunsetting this, but continuing it until really construction starts. And once construction starts, then it's not as much of a problem, all the problems, but the neighbors have seen this as a focal point to make comments. And so therefore I suggest we consider not sunsetting at the end of this year. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mike. That's exactly the discussion I wanted to prompt this evening, just to get folks to think about, especially the next few months, but certainly leading up to construction. I was just going to mention that I've invited the SFMTA to present to this group. This meeting didn't work out for them, and the timing will be better in a couple of months. So when we do calendar the next meeting, they will be an agenda item, and they'll be able to present to everyone what they're working on, particularly in the neighborhood, and answer all of your questions. So that is at least one agenda item we have. And then obviously the other big item that I want to make sure we cover with the group is sort of what is next for the CAC and what is next for the community. You were all instrumental in helping us codify in the approval documents all sorts of ways that the developer will be required to host community feedback and public input. And so we want to, I would just really want to work with everyone to make sure we take what's on the paper and we work it into something that is tangible and real and allows for a really robust continued community process. One more thing I just want to announce is I do have a colleague here from OEWD, John Francis. I'll let him introduce himself in a second. He is going to be spearheading the kind of implementation and construction aspect and oversight from the city's behalf. So I wanted him to introduce himself quickly to you all.
Hi, everybody. Like Lee said, my name is John Francis. I work at OEWD. I'm on what we call the housing delivery team. So it's kind of like the counterpart to Lee's team, who works on some of these larger development agreement projects before entitlement. We also have a team of staff who we kind of specialize in working with all the different agencies in the implementation of these projects. So, all the infrastructure agencies, planning, DBI, you name it, to make sure that the projects get implemented as they were envisioned in all the approval documents, as they were envisioned by the community and the city. We're just really interested in making sure that the community gets all the community benefits that are promised in the DA. And so that's kind of my job. And I really look forward to working with you all in this group in an ongoing basis over the next months and years. This will of course be a long-term process. And Lee is going to be around as a resource for us as well. She obviously has a ton of in-depth knowledge on the background of this project. So I'll definitely be calling Lee on occasion when I have questions. But yeah, so I just wanted to introduce myself. I really look forward to kind of working with you all and getting to know you better over the next few months.
Thanks, John. And John, Winston, I'll turn it back to you. Those were the announcements I wanted to give.
Okay, I would like to spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes just seeing what's in top of mind with people as far as the future of the CAC goes. But really quickly, let's just approve the minutes from last meeting. Has everybody had a chance to take a look?
I have, and I have a comment on the minutes.
Okay.
I put in my piece of paper. On page 6, it says I said something, and it says no additional comments, period. I support Laura and thinking that the open areas to speak to a dance. I don't know what that sentence means, but I just suggest we take it out because it doesn't make any sense. The rest of it is fine. And that's the only comment I have on the minutes. And with that exception, I approve the minutes.
Okay, anybody else?
I think I saw a typo in page 7 under John's comments where it says Jennifer Hickey's idea. So I think that her last name was misspelled.
Good, thank you. Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor? Oh, I guess I can't do that. I have to go through it. Okay, Michael Ahrens.
Approved.
Approved. Bridget, is she here yet? Still not here. Christine Godinez.
Approve.
Amy O'Hare.
Approve.
Maurice Rivers.
Approve.
Mark Tang.
Aye.
Peter Tam.
Approved.
And I vote aye, so it's unanimous. Okay, if anybody has any particular comments to make about the future of the CAC, now would be a good time to just put them out there. I don't think we have time for like a really in-depth discussion, but we could talk about it offline at some point, but just sort of get the ideas out and see what people are thinking at the moment. Would be great. Anybody?
Hey, John, could I
Okay, yeah, Mark.
give some feedback? I would recommend to continue the CAC as well, just to keep track of construction since it's such a long timeline. The other thing I would encourage is once the different phases of the community are built out, that we do include a member from that community to join.
From which community?
From the actual building, so Balboa Reservoir.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the residents there.
Anybody else?
Yes, I would like to see the CAC continue under the aegis of the city. I would not like to see it devolve into something that is managed by the developer team. I think there are a lot of long-running CACs like, the pedestrian safety, and we should also be a long-running city-sponsored, city oversight CAC.
Okay.
I've already expressed my comments, so I just.
Okay. Anybody else? My thinking is, yeah, I'd like to see the CAC continue, but the Balboa Station Area Committee sunsetted a few years ago, and at this point, my proposal would be to merge those two committees together into one committee, and sort of start looking at the neighborhood as a whole rather than just this one little section of the neighborhood. And that way we can really attack transportation issues and congestion and basic livability in the whole neighborhood. And also the other CAC left a lot of loose ends when they sunsetted. So there's a lot going on at the corner of San Jose and Ocean, for instance, that never got addressed, and lots of the new rebuilding of Ocean Avenue and the freeway exit off of the 280. All these little things need to be shepherded through, I think. And I think that would be great if we could continue the CAC, but widen the viewpoint a little bit. So look into that in the future.
I would absolutely second that recommendation. That's an excellent idea.
Well, at the last meeting, I think I said the same thing, so I would third it. I think many of us, myself included, I went to many of the Balboa committee meetings, and it did sunset, the other one, and it stopped sort of in the middle, and they really didn't complete, I think, what they had to do. And so I think this is an area analysis, as you say, John. So I think we should, if we have time, take on a little bit bigger area, because it's only a half a mile to a mile away from us.
Yeah, we'd have to coordinate with Supervisor with Asha, I guess, or else we'd have to cover a different area. But if we want to cover the Balboa station, then we'd be dealing with two supervisorial districts. But I think we can work that out. I'm not sure what his opinion is on it, but this is just me thinking, and I'm glad to see that there's some consensus. Okay, anything else before we go to the next item? All right, we are now going to discuss the project pre-development status. And is it Nora who's going to speak, or somebody, one of the developer
Yep,
folks?
I'm going
It
to
is
speak,
Nora.
John.
Okay,
All right.
you have the
I'm
floor.
gonna- Great. I'm going to bring up my screen real quick. Can everyone see my screen?
We can see it.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you everyone for having us here today. And definitely, before we kind of kick off on what our schedule looks like over the next couple of years, and then we're going to dive into really what the next year looks like, it's our commitment and our interest in continuing to have long and ongoing conversations, whether it's from a design standpoint or a construction standpoint. One of the things about Bridge and Avalon Bay is that we're both long-term holders and long-term owners, and we really committed to being a part of the neighborhood for the long term, and we'll be continuing to have these conversations and kind of walk you through what some of that looks like over the next couple of years and over the next year, but just wanted to kind of start with that at the forefront. So I'm going to talk through what the next 5 years look like, and then we'll dive into what that really means for us over the next year. And to kick off, as you guys know, what I think about kind of when we think about the next year of happening is we're really working on the design and the financing. We're in the process of taking the master infrastructure plan, which you guys have all seen. We're part of the development agreement. We're turning those conceptual drawings into more formal construction drawings so that one day they can be real drivable streets. And we're doing the same with the DSG. We're taking the structure that we put together from the design standards and guidelines and applying it to our buildings for phase one. So we've been kicking off selecting architecture teams, selecting design teams, interiors, landscape, and folks along those lines to help bring these buildings to life. And we're doing the exact same thing with the park, figuring out who our master landscape architect is, kind of started taking all the conversations we've had and started putting together some conceptual designs. And while we're doing all of that, we're going to be looking for a new townhouse developer who's going to be taking on another piece of phase one. The townhouse is on the west side of the site, and simultaneously applying for state financing. So assuming that all goes well, our goal remains to start construction in late 2022, really targeting late summer, early fall. And that's going to start with grading, resetting the site, and then the creation of the roads. Vertical design would likely start in early 2023, and then first residents would be able to move in to phase one in 2024. And I'll go ahead and walk through, just remind everyone where that all is on the site as we get through this presentation. So that's what the big plan is, and we'll be diving into phase two design in 2024, 2025. So what does that mean for the next year? Let's get to the next slide. So as you know, we're here at a CAC now. We're starting our phase one building design. And in order to take the next steps with our design, they will need to be coming back, and we're excited to come back to the community to show kind of what those conceptual drawings look like, what the DSG looks like, bringing that to life for our phase one buildings. So we'd be expecting to come back for a conversation about our design of the buildings and the park late summer, early fall of this year, or midsummer, early fall of this year, to really talk through, now that we've worked with our architects and design teams, what do these buildings really look like, and how can they come to life, and how does the park come to life based on the conversations we've had. While we'll be doing that, as I mentioned, we'll be working with our finalizing a townhouse developer, and then once that townhouse developer has been finalized, they're going to be doing the same thing and letting everyone know what are these townhouses going to look like, what's it going to feel like, what are the road, how are the roads going to fully lay out within the townhouse development. What are the trees that we're going to be selecting over across the site, and things along those lines. So our expectation is we'll be having those conversations at least around the park and our phase one buildings midsummer of this year. And during that time, we'll be continuing to work through our infrastructure design. And just so everyone remembers what phase one and what kind of we're going to be looking at for this next round is really the park. It's these two buildings right here, which are Avalon Bay, and these two buildings right here, which are Bridge. This is the Educator Building, Building F, and Building E, and then the townhouses. So during first phase, once we're at full build out, as you may recall, the north parcel, parcel G, and parcels A and B will both be surface parking. And that will be what we start designing in 2024. So that is kind of where we are from a scheduling standpoint. And yeah, I guess at that, I'll open it up to any questions you guys have.
John, you're muted.
Here we go. Just looking for raised hands. If anybody in the committee would like to say something first before we go to the public comment
I would like to
or
ask.
to ask questions.
Do you hear me, John?
Yes,
Could I ask a few questions, please?
sure, please.
Okay. I see in your procedure here that you talked about you're working on design financing. Can you discuss how much of that is public and how much of that is private financing that you need to obtain? And then I'll ask a second question too. When you address how much financing you really are looking for, we all know that from our own experience and from my experience, that COVID-19 has had a severe impact on both private banks and on public entities financing. So can you address what practical impact you think the pandemic will have on you actually being able to obtain financing? And let me introduce who I am. I'm the president of the Westwood Park Association, which directly adjoins the property. So I have a lot of people on Plymouth Avenue, a lot of people that really want to know when this really will start. So the question is, do you really think you can get this financing in light of the pandemic?
Do we want to do are we answering questions kind of as they come? Or are we going to do a full, yep, and okay. Mike, yeah, nice to see you again. We've met a couple of times. And to quick answer to your question, our plan, it's a mix of public and private financing that we're going to be going after, including the townhouse development, which is going to be financing a decent amount of the gap on the project. And at this point, things are looking pretty good for the year. Kirsten, I can let you speak a little bit to some of the infrastructure financing and what things look like from a state level. But
sure. Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. Great to see you all again. Kirsten from Bridge. You will see a sign out on the Balboa Reservoir. Maybe it was put up Friday, maybe it was put up today, notifying folks that the Mayor's Office of Housing is making their first investment in the property. Traditionally, when we build affordable housing, we start with what we call our pre-development money. So that's the money that helps us design the building, hire architects, pay the architects at a time when we don't have any other real sources. So Bridge and the Mayor's Office of Housing will be sharing those costs for one of the buildings in phase one. And so there'll be public notice about that. But the rest of our financing plan remains as it was through the adoption process. So if you recall, there's a 50% affordability requirement, 33% is funded by the developer. And so that's, the sources that are more on the private side, and then 17% is funded by the mayor's office. So some of the units in building E, one of the first two affordable buildings, will get, after the pre-development money, also what we call gap financing, which just means the last money in to cover the cost of building those units and the gap between what the rent could generate versus the cost of building it. So that money from the city comes much later in the process. It'll probably come to us right before we start construction. And then Nora referred to infrastructure financing. So we're committed to building all these new roads and new parks. And one of the sources we identified early as part of our 2017 response, I think, was the IIG grant, which is a state grant. I think it stands for Infrastructure Infill Grant. It's very competitive, and we'll be chasing that for this project. The state has recently increased the size of that pool in a very meaningful way in acknowledgement of how important that is for economic stimulus post-COVID. So we don't know how competitive the pool will be, but we're very excited to see that the state is committing additional funds to that source.
Well, thank you. The other question, probably my last question, is that the asset purchase agreement, the land purchase agreement, seems to have contingencies on you arranging your financing. So is it correct, because I haven't read that for like the last 6 months or a year, that the asset, you really won't take title to the land until you get your financing lined up? Is that correct?
Yeah, I wish it was that simple. If I recall, the DA and the PSA have lots of like twists and turns and places where there's if then. So if all goes well, as Nora said, we would take title of the land after we had all our financing in place.
Right.
And then we'd be starting construction. There is a contingency plan for the PUC who was interested in making sure they sold the property by a certain point, that if for some reason we didn't have our acts together at that point, then we would still be committed to purchasing the land so they could plan for the capital that they're gaining and being able to use it in their own planning.
You know, I remember well Supervisor Peskin put in there after discussing with me, use it or lose it situation. And that's the provision you're talking about. My last question is, you mentioned that there's a lot of other things that have to happen. Without going, asking you about each one, is there any other thing that appears to be a problem? And again, the only reason I'm asking this is we really want to know if this is a realistic project or not. Do you appear to be on the track towards closing the land purchase agreement?
I mean, we're feeling really, really optimistic. I agree with you that this last year has been something that everyone has struggled to kind of understand on every front of their lives, including development. That said, I think our hurdles remain the same as they were the year before, and not necessarily that much more difficult. I think if we were about to drop a hammer last year, that would have been a much rockier moment for all of these question marks to come up about the future of the economy, the short-term future. My crystal ball is looking pretty positive. I don't know what else I can offer there. Maybe Nora has something from the market rate side.
Thank you, Kirsten and Nora. That's all I have, John.
Anybody else from the committee care to say anything or ask any questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Amy.
Yeah, I was wondering about the logistics of the City College students and faculty using that temporary surface parking at the north side of the site during construction. What will be will they be using North Drive just like all the construction vehicles? I mean, that's how they're getting in, and that's also how all the construction vehicles are getting in. They're sharing that entrance to the site. That's my first question. I have a couple others.
Sure. And so there's going to be a short time frame, when we start construction and we're starting infrastructure construction where there will not be right off the bat there won't be a shared parking, right? There's going to be, we need to rebuild North Drive and we need to create a road so that we can create a parking, a flat lot. I'm going to go back up to the picture you're referencing, that we can create this. And once that is being the case, we haven't worked through absolute construction logistics, to be honest, on that yet, Amy, but I think that would be the expectation, is that, yes, there are construction trucks coming in. Yes, City College students and faculty are parking there, and we're going to have to find a clean way to make that feel safe and work. It's something, we're typically building in fairly dense neighborhoods that I think we're going to be able to find a way to make that work and make that feel safe.
Thanks. I also wondered about these the design meetings in the early fall.
Summer, early fall. Yeah.
Will they be real meetings?
In person?
Yeah.
I mean, I hope so. Like, right? That would be a dream. I think it's a lot nicer to talk about design in person than it is necessarily over Zoom. I think a lot of that's going to be driven by what rules are on in-person meetings at that point in time. But we'd love to have some charrettes and some boards and be able to kind of really show some imagery.
And my last question is just, what do you think the actual date for shoving the earth around? You know, just basically, you know, getting in there with physical machines and breaking stuff up and moving it around.
Best case scenario, September 2022.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Oh yeah, let me just for the record say that Bridget, hi Bridget, she's arrived and she's now present.
Yes, sorry about that. I had a CCSF meeting that went over. So I didn't hear everything, so please excuse me if I ask something that's been asked before and let me know. I can answer, I guess, or at least comment on this map that we're looking at right now for phase 1, and it shows a different location for North Drive than the other map that was previously shown. So I think this is the old one here that you're showing us.
No, this location for North Drive is where the easement was landed. So North Drive is intended at this point to
Well, I
run
guess
where North.
I can't see what it's next to, but it's
So if you look,
okay.
let's
Oh,
see.
I see that the other one's the old one. This one's the old one, and then the new one would be right up next to Reardon.
Right up next to Reardon, correct.
Got it, got it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure about that. And then I heard a little bit from someone else on the committee asking about the new world of housing in San Francisco now after the pandemic. And I know that someone just told me that the normally below market rate units that have a lottery system, that there's no one even in the lottery now because they've all moved out. So I don't know if that's true, but is that affecting anything regarding this development?
Well, I can maybe jump in, Bridget. Hi, Lee from OEWD. That's a great question. Our need for affordable housing, particularly subsidized affordable housing, is still vast. We absolutely have oversubscribed, you know, lottery drawings for every single unit that we can build. The need is still very great. That's just sort of a simple answer. But Kirsten, you're also on the ground from the nonprofit houser perspective, so you can also speak.
Yeah, I mean, this time last year, our company was preparing to lose a lot of revenue through rents, either because people lost jobs or because they chose to leave. And I can say that our vacancy rates have remained constant and our rent payment rates have remained constant over the past year. That is to say, people are continuing to pay their rent in affordable housing all up and down California. We have buildings in Southern California as well as the entire Bay Area. So I don't believe that that's an accurate portrayal of how people are experiencing affordable housing, and people are continuing to live it. I will say that in the short term, you might say that like an 80% AMI unit was going to rent at, and I'm totally making these numbers up for the conversation, was going to rent at $2,000. And maybe for the next year or two, you'll see that go down a little bit, and then you'll see it go back onto its curve. That's what some people in our industry are talking about, is the actual rent levels for certain income brackets having a small dip or not rising. You know, usually in the San Francisco case, when we have like housing costs stall, it just means they don't go up as fast. So that's, I mean, that's kind of where we're seeing it. Of course, the Mayor's Office of Housing will require us to do current market rate studies to make sure we're offering housing that's below the current market. So there's a rule in the city that says, like, no matter what level of affordability you're meant to offer, if someone can get that on the market the day that you're opening your building, then you've got to lower your AMI targets, because it's not a public good if you can just get it in the private market anyway.
So,
So hopefully that addresses your questions.
Yeah, and when you said that's not accurate, I don't know what's accurate. That's why I was asking.
Sure, yeah.
I just had heard these things about, and I thought that might be a market indicator. I don't know. I was asking you guys, but that's only speaking to half of the housing, 50%. What about the other 50% of the market rate housing? Is there still a market for that now, or is there any kind of analysis of what's going on after the pandemic?
From a market rate standpoint, I mean, as everyone on this call knows, rents have fallen somewhere between 20 and 35% across the board. That being said, Avalon Bay owns a number of projects here in the San Francisco proper, and would like to continue to be a provider of housing in San Francisco for a number of years to come. And I think, talking to our investment committee, talking across the board, we are continually excited to build apartments here.
Okay. Anybody else from the committee before we go to public comment? Are you done, Bridget?
Yeah, I guess it's, there's no analysis then. It's just that you're committed to building.
I guess, what type of analysis are you looking for?
I didn't know if that this particular fluctuation in the market portends something more serious. I don't know. I'm not in real estate. That's why I was asking you guys, the experts, about this, if any kind of analysis had been done. But what you're saying is it doesn't need to, because Avalon is committed to being here in the future, regardless of whatever.
I mean, rents are down, and therefore when rents are down, it makes it more difficult to make the decision to build right off the bat, right? Depending, still roughly the same cost that it was last year. Rents are down a little bit. That doesn't necessarily that makes things more difficult. And I think, as Kirsten kind of spoke to earlier, if shovels were going in the ground today, we might be a little bit more nervous about starting construction right now. But as a long-term landholder in San Francisco and a long-term, we have as I mentioned, we have a number of different apartments throughout the city. We're broadly still excited and looking forward to moving forward with the project and having people live in the new Avalon Bay homes one day.
Great. Okay, I guess.
Hey, John, I have a quick question.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. On the slide with the timeline, it says apply for phase 2 financing in 2025. And I just want to get clarity, because it says apply and insinuates that the funding is not there. So if that could just be kind of teased out to say, like, will there be an adjustment at some point, or is it just kind of more placeholder to show that the funding's there, but it's just going to have to be a readjustment for whatever financial market conditions we're in at that point?
Well, I think that refers to for the affordable housing buildings in phase 2.
Okay.
So both of those require some public subsidy, and those are competitive sources. We don't have them in our hand right now. But our job, my job, and whoever our partner who builds Mission Housing, who builds that other building, our jobs are to make the projects match what the criteria are, and be really good at getting those sources. Yep.
Good luck. And then the second, hopefully easy question is Lee Avenue the connection part of phase 1? So Lee Avenue will connect all the way through, or is that part of phase 2?
All of the infrastructure will be complete in phase 1 from a road standpoint. So North, Lee, kind of the whole loop road will all be complete in phase 1.
Okay, so Lee will be connected down to Ocean Avenue at the end of phase 1. Got it. All right, thank you.
Okay.
I have a
Anybody else?
question as well.
Go ahead.
This is more pertaining to design, but we, in past meetings, we had kind of discussed the pandemic's impact on future design of both the buildings and the open space. Do you, with the possibility of the pandemic ending, has the developer considered permanently implementing some of the suggestions made in previous meetings, like design building with better ventilation and open air spaces that allow for bigger, like larger spacing between people, or do you anticipate the possibility of any changes?
From a design standpoint, at least on an Avalon Bay standpoint, and Kirsten, you can speak to what you're kind of kicking off with Bridge. We're definitely acknowledging the changes in how people might want to live after the last year, both from the conversations we've had here and kind of some of the feedback we've gotten at our projects across the country. And I think whether it's creating individual work from home spaces within some of the apartment homes to thinking about how we're circulating air, we're in the kickoff of those conversations and happy to talk more about it once we get further along through the design.
Yeah, we're probably one click behind you, Nora. I know our company has had some conversations and we've just almost selected our design team for building E and F. So once we have them on board, we'll definitely dive into those conversations.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak up?
John, I have one quick follow-up based on what Bridget Davila question. Can I have one? My last question is, I read the over 1,000-page draft EIR of City College of San Francisco, and in it they had a statement that they intend to start construction on both the Steam and Diego Rivera properties on the upper lot in 2022. Have you had discussions to coordinate your construction with City College's construction? And if so, what have come of those meetings?
It's a great question. And we actually have our first kickoff meeting next week to kind of talk through some of how that's going to play out.
Good.
Hi, Michael. This is John Francis again. I just wanted to chime in there. I'm helping coordinate some of those conversations between Avalon Bay and Bridge and City College and all the other infrastructure agencies at the city that are going to need to be involved in those conversations to make sure that the construction is done in a way that there's no conflict and that the community's concerns around construction are addressed. So like Nora said, we literally just scheduled that for next week. So more to come on that.
That's expected. Things are going so fast, but thank you. And hopefully at the next CAC meeting, we can have a little mini report on how that's going.
Sure thing.
All right.
Okay, let's go to public comment. And I guess, I don't have the information. Sung-Yen, are you, can you
Sure,
unmic yourself and go through the process? I don't have the phone numbers or any of that stuff here.
Yeah, so we just put up a slide about public comment. If you want to make a comment, please raise your hand. If you're using your phone, you can press 9. If you are on your computer, you can find the little hand button. So I know already some people have hands on, so we can start with that. John, could you remind how many minutes? You're gonna time it, right?
Yeah, 2 minutes.
Okay. So
Yeah,
I see 2 people. So we can start with Harry.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, this group should definitely continue, independent from the developer. So, as I recall, there was Avalon Bay was very industrious in getting public support, finances, and I believe there was a considerable money already locked in at the time that the project was approved. So I'm just re-asking Michael Aaron's question. He asked how much private money and how much public money, besides what is already known to be available, Avalon Bay or Reservoir Partners need for this project, because that was sidestepped. And so my other question is, and it's probably obvious, but there was discussion previously about benchmarks that the project would have to meet so that the market rate and the subsidized units would, so there wasn't one that was prioritized over the other. And I assume that the benchmarks only begin after the first shovel is in the ground. Yeah, I guess those are my questions for now.
Okay, we'll save the answers till this. Till the end, I guess.
Is there also a general public comment later, or is this it?
Yeah, that'll be number 4.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
The next is Kristen Hansen.
Isn't there an answer, or is it just questions?
We'll save them up and we'll get back to you. At the end
Okay,
of
got it.
this. We'll just plow through the public comment and see if some of the questions might overlap a bit. Christine?
Okay, thank you. I also think it's very important that the CAC continue, especially during construction. There's just so much coordination. And it would really, it would be very harmful, I think, for it not to continue. Could you be, Mr. Francis, a little more specific about your kickoff meeting? I think that was, I'm sorry, I don't remember your first name. The kickoff meeting, and I'm assuming you're going to be meeting with City College. Are those going to be public meetings? Let's see that question. And then, is there a way to let people know, or will you know any sort of a schedule of the large trucks? I know there's going to be a lot of landfill or fill that's going to go in, and I would imagine those are going to be big trucks rolling. Is there a way to sort of capture that schedule so that students and staff at City College can be made aware to expect big trucks rolling through at certain times? That would be helpful. What are the guidelines? And this may be a little, well, it's not too early because it's part of the planning. The guidelines around faculty who move into the faculty housing and then receive pink slips. We've had quite a number of part-time and tenured faculty that have just received pink slips and may lose their jobs at City College. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Christine, what was that first question? Can you just summarize?
Mr. Francis referred to a kickoff meeting, and I'm assuming that he's talking about some sort of a coordination project, coordination meeting. And I'm wondering if those will be public. I know there have been City College and city agency meetings that have been private, but I don't think those have been as helpful as a public meeting could be, especially during this time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
So John, I don't see any more hands. If there's anyone who technically can't raise a hand, you can speak now. I'll give a couple of seconds here. I guess we have none.
All right. Well, seeing none, I could have given you more time to speak. All right. Well, then let's, Mr. Francis, John Francis, you were going to, I guess, Harry had a question about financing, public versus private.
And maybe I can jump in and speak to that. I'm not
sure.
exactly, Harry, if maybe you want to restate it slightly. You had said in your comment that there was some money in hand when the project was approved, and I can certainly talk to that. I think probably what you're referring to is that city commitment to be a partial funder on the affordable housing projects.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. Yes.
And there are also some state funds, though maybe all of those were competitive and you were just hoping for them rather than gotten promises. I really wasn't clear when I saw a list that someone had aggregated of. And the other part, I guess, it's the same question, is ultimately how much is Reservoir Partners paying? Money that they're not raising from other sources.
So thank you for your question. The funding sources that were mentioned during the approval process, including the city affordable housing funding, are just lists of sources. All of those funds need to be appropriated in the case of the city funding or competitively awarded via state grant applications. And so that's what Kirsten was just describing earlier in the process, in terms of going to state sources and applying for those. In terms of the city funding, through the approvals that occurred last summer, early fall, the city has sort of committed to providing that funding for the affordable housing. But just like every other grant and loan that the city issues, that has to go through our standard appropriations process. So that will work its way through loan applications by the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, and ultimately will go through the Board of Supervisors to be approved. Those will be done pursuant to the big approval package that you all helped work on that was approved, but nonetheless, they still have to be appropriated at the right time. The city likes to be the last funder generally, so we come in with our funding at the end once in this case, Bridge has leveraged as many other sources as they can. We'll come in with our loan as well.
Okay. And
Does that mean if those particular sources don't match your needs, then you go looking some more? You know, to other sources that may not have been identified.
Well, in the city's case, we're committed to our source of funding, which is our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Yes. Thank you for your question.
Okay, and then Christine had 4 questions about the coordination of the meeting with City College.
Sure, I can take that one. So this first meeting, you know, it's just materialized actually just in the last few days. So we, you know, the agenda for the meeting will really be talking about introducing the project schedule to City College capital planning staff, and sharing information on, you know, their construction schedule on their projects. There will be a lot of infrastructure that will be serving potentially both projects on Lee Avenue, which, as you know, is partly on the City College property. So, you know, this first meeting is really kind of a get to know you and sort of sharing schedules. We hope to have a long-running sort of conversation with between City College and the project, so that, again, just to make sure that we're coordinated and making sure that, you know, the construction can proceed and that there's no conflicts in terms of what infrastructure is serving each project. At the present time, you know, I don't know what the pace of those meetings will be, and, you know, so I can report back on what we learn at those meetings. So hopefully that answers your question for the time being.
Okay. Also, Christine was concerned about trucks and equipment coming in and out of. Will there be a schedule that people can be privy to?
Yeah, and I can speak to that a little bit. As you know, something that we agreed to per the development agreement is kind of a commitment to conversation about our construction plan. And so once that construction plan gets finalized, we'll be sharing that with the community. And as people have questions, we'll have people on site that you can reach out to, you can call, you can email, kind of across the board. In terms of diving into the details of a truck schedule, that's like a level more detailed than we've worked through at this point, but it's something to keep in mind with, and, you know, we'll be thinking about it as we start to put together a construction schedule.
Okay, and she had an interesting question also about what are the guidelines around faculty who move into housing but then get pink slipped, or in any case, if they, for whatever reason, leave their job as faculty, what happens? Do they lose their home? Or, I mean, it's kind of a funny situation.
Can I I answer that?
Sure.
Oh, okay. So we're not even there yet. We don't have a criteria yet for who's moving into faculty housing or not. That's something that we're all going to work out. And also that this is what's happening right now with pink slips or the March 15th notices is putting people on notice. They may not necessarily lose their jobs. And then secondly, if they were to, other community colleges have done this before, and we plan to use them as a model, like San Mateo Community College has actually done this before. So I just want to let you know from CCSF's end of it that we're going to be looking into what people have done before and what are the best practices.
Okay. Well, that's all let's see if there's any more public comment. Last chance. Okay, anybody from the, oh, no, Nora's. Okay, is there anybody from the committee who would like to respond to public comment? Okay, well, I guess that concludes this section of the meeting.
John, I'm sorry, but John Francis didn't answer the question that Christine had, which was the City College meeting, will it be public?
Oh.
This first meeting is a meeting among staff, so it's not intended to be public. No, it's really a coordinating meeting for the project sponsor, the city, and City College to understand schedules and just make sure that we're not working at cross purposes from each other in terms of building these important housing and on the Balboa side, and I know the theater and the STEAM building on the City College side.
Okay. A good reason for us to continue the CAC in some form, or so we can keep track of these things. Have somebody a group to report back to when these meetings happen. General public comment. Are we ready? Okay. Anybody wants to speak about anything that's, whether it's on or not on the agenda? I see a hand raised with a phone number.
Yeah, we can start with the phone number ending with 594. And I also just heard that it might be hard to find the raising hand feature. So at the end of the public comment, I will ask again so you can speak without raising your hand. So start with phone number 594.
Hi, this is Laura from Westwood Park, and I just was wondering if there's any news yet whether the, I know the appraisal wasn't available for the public, at first, and I was wondering if there's any change in that. And then when they're talking about state funding for the infrastructure, my understanding that was one of the reasons the price was low was because the developers are going to be spending a lot of money on infrastructure. So I was wondering what kind of percentages are you guys talking when you're saying you're going to ask the state for a grant? Are you talking like for 20%, for 50%, or whatever of the cost of infrastructure? And the last thing was, it hasn't been talked about at all because there's always been so much else going on, but obviously Westwood Park, specifically Plymouth Avenue, is going to be really hit by this construction project with just, the moving of land and big trucks and stuff like that. And I was wondering if there's any kind of mitigation protocols or any kind of thought given to, how to help owners have, get compensated or minimal damage or whatever to their properties, because most of these houses are pretty old. Thank you.
Thank you. Next I see hand Harry Bernstein.
Harry, you there?
Yes, I just saw the unmute. Yeah, a couple questions. One in line with the with what Laura asked. I remember from the EIR that there were three areas where mitigation was not possible. I'm just trying to get an update. Um, I somehow I remember that may have been waived by the Board of Supervisors. Those three areas that they couldn't fix them, so they just go over them. And if not, what is the mitigation for those? One was noise, one was pollution. I forget the third. That's one. Also, I've been in communication with someone who lives in New York. He says that Avalon Bay has 6 projects that they have constructed there, most in Manhattan. One, I think, is in Brooklyn. He noted in each case they spent plenty of money on lobbyists to get these built. I've hardly ever heard that word in conjunction with these meetings. So my question is, um, where are where in the city, who do the lobbyists have to report to? Where is this, who keeps track? I know there's something maybe at the Ethics Commission, but that's pretty low level, and it was virtually out of commission for months during the pandemic, I think by the mayor's order, something like that. So I'd like to track that. How much money, how much lobbying was done to secure, a full house at the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, all those agencies that didn't blink and said, yes, everything is perfect, when many of us knew that it's not perfect. So just what the nature of the lobbying and what agencies in the city are responsible for tracking it in some sense. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Christine Hansen.
Okay, thank you. So I am curious to know, John Francis, if the meetings that follow your initial meet and greet meeting will be public. You didn't mention that. So then the other thing is the draft EIR for the City College Facilities Master Plan is in its public comment period. If you want to take a look at the draft EIR for the City College Facility Master Plan, I'll try to attach it to the chat, not the EIR, but the notice, which has the contact information. And just to follow up on what Harry said, where would we look up lobbyists that were, I guess, hired in connection with this project? It'd be really nice and interesting to find that out. Thank you. Be well, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think next is Madeline.
Yes. Oh, just a moment. Oops. I don't think I'm on the audio.
We hear you.
We hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. As a follow-up to what Chris is saying about having a more public aspect to things going forward, this is actually to help the process, because there were so many very new people. And when you say capital planning staff, even I, who've been there 1,000 years, I don't know who that is. But new folks without intent many times just don't quite get it right, because they just haven't been around long enough. So the public is, we're here to help, is actually whatever happens has to be done for everybody's benefit and everybody's smoothness, if you will. And that's really the motivation for making whatever is happening as public, so the public can help, especially in terms of making things go more smoothly. I just wanted to mention that. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands, but if anyone want to speak now, please go ahead.
This is Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
Yeah, we hear you.
I just had one question about the geothermal wells. Has anyone found out anything more about them? Can you say anything about them? Because that has an impact on City College, or it may have an on City College development.
Let's see if we can get some answers to some of these questions and see if anybody else raises their hand afterwards.
Thank you. I see Harry's hand again.
Okay.
Harry, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there was a reference to the SFMTA because I remember that when they came to a couple of your meetings toward the end, and I remember that the many people in the community were disturbed because there was nothing of a practical nature. It was more pie in the sky and something would be nice, but there was no commitment. I gather that by having the agency come to you, to this committee, there's an opportunity to pursue that. So we don't expect you to have answers without their participation. Is that true?
I'll just say that we're really expecting MTA to be at the next meeting and to have some constructive things to say about how we're going to mitigate, how we're going to handle the traffic and congestion and all and transportation and transit as well. So that's something that's top of mind for me. I want to make sure that that gets addressed.
We'll stay tuned for that. Okay.
Yeah. There was a question about meetings being public, those City College meetings, or that was already addressed. And are there any lobbyists that are? I haven't heard anything about any lobbyists being involved in this project. Can we just?
This is Lee. Hi, John. I can. We do. I forget which commenter mentioned this, but the city does have reporting requirements about lobbying, and so I can distribute to the CAC that information. I don't have a link or an exact web page to provide, but there are reporting requirements. So I'm happy to figure out where that page is and share that with you all.
Okay. Did I miss anything from any of the questions that were asked?
John, I had a question.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go to the committee then.
I actually lost my connection when someone was asking about geothermal wells, so I don't know if that was answered or not, but I can.
Oh, no, it wasn't answered. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, there was, the facilities committee and our staff at CCSF were negotiating with the city, and we had worked out a deal for the ownership of the geothermal wells.
Okay. Anything?
Yes, John, there are two questions I think that haven't been addressed yet.
Which is?
By Laura. One is that when will the appraisal that was done for the property for $11.4 million, I think she said, be available? Because I was told by Lee at one stage that under the law that is not available at this time. So Laura's question is, at some stage it should become available. When is it? And the second question I think she asked is there anything that can be set up for possible damages to the homes along Plymouth Avenue? And I don't think that has been answered.
Anybody up for that one?
I would maybe have Nora or Kirsten address that second question, Mike. In terms of the appraisal, the answer has not changed. That's a proprietary document of the PUCs. It's their document. So they've fully disclosed everything that you can see in the attachments of all the approval documents, and that's all the material that they will disclose.
Well, I know you've told me that before, but I wanted you to answer that question for Laura.
No problem.
And in addition to that, I will add the further question: isn't there a time that it does become under the law available? Is it after the sale closes, Lee? Do you know that?
I will have to double check on that. I don't want to, I don't know the answer right now.
When I talked about 5 months ago when I asked for the appraisal. Okay, and so what about, so that response, at least as of now, you feel that there's still no authority to release the appraisal, is that correct? Lee?
Yes, that's correct, Mike. Thanks.
The other question, maybe Nora can answer, that Laura asked about the damages to property along Plymouth Avenue or any other property.
Absolutely. And, I want to reiterate first, there's been a lot of questions about construction plans, whether it's trucks or kind of what's going to be happening and when it's going to be happening. And I want you guys to know that we really want to continue to have an open dialogue about that. And as we start to finalize our construction plan and our soil mitigation plan, we'll be sharing those all regularly. At this point, as we look at the construction and the studies we've done to date, we don't expect there to be any damage to any of the surrounding areas. One of the nice things about how we're going to be building, and we're going to be taking the soil that's already on site and spreading it kind of across to level the site a little bit, or to truly level the site. And we don't assume that from the conversations we've had, we don't think there will be any impact to the homes on Plymouth at this point.
But if there is, that doesn't answer the question. If there is damage, is there somebody or some supervisor on site, both for City College and for the Balboa development team, that can be contacted if there's claims to be made?
Absolutely. For any neighbor who has any questions on any type of construction that will be going on, whether it's because you're next door or because you smell something that smells funny, there is going to be a point of contact that will be able to be reached by phone, email, and we'll be sharing that contact information, and that information will be posted on the site. So there will be plenty of points of contact.
And I suggest in the meeting between City College and Balboa, since the development will go on at exactly the same time, that there be one point person for both developments, so that they don't do this, as I see with contractors quite candidly, point fingers at each other. Is that possible, Nora?
They're two separate scopes, and they're going to be run by two separate projects, but it's definitely something we'll see the best way to help manage community coordination. And really, if they're going to be run at the same time, we'll be working in joint process together to have the least impact we can.
The record should reflect that I was on TV, but many of you are on the phone. When I went like this, I meant each contractor points the finger at the other. So
right.
And
Got that.
you have one point person for all the people along the development, both in Sunnyside and in Westwood Park. Thank you.
Okay, well, it is unbelievably 7:15, which is exactly when general public comment is supposed to end. But
So
I'll just
John,
ask
I think there's one more comment.
Of course there is. Okay, who is that? That can let the
I think it's Laura. Phone number with 594.
Okay.
Hi, this is Laura again. And one of the question I had that wasn't addressed was, as of this moment, what kind of percentage of the infrastructure does the developer expect the state to grant them money-wise? What percentage of the costs, and what percentage of the costs does Avalon expect to bear for the infrastructure?
Okay. Who can answer that question? The elevator pitch.
I think that it's still pretty up in the air at this point, in terms of, there were, as Kirsten kind of mentioned, and maybe Kirsten can speak to this a little bit more, there's a number of different types of funding sources that we're going to be going after, both for the infrastructure and the affordable housing, and the exact numbers are still to be determined.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more to say there, Nora. This is Kirsten, everyone. The DA had a financing plan, and there was a lot of work that went into the negotiation behind all of that. And we are chasing the exact strategy that the Planning Commission and the board and the PUC all approved. So we haven't really, changed our strategy or had a need to revisit that. I will say that part of that agreement has a minimum contribution for Avalon Bay towards land, towards affordable housing, towards infrastructure, towards all the important things that the board wanted to make sure that Avalon was going to continue to contribute as the market rate partner. I honestly do not have the numbers memorized. They are very specific, but that is certainly something you can find in the documents. And I'm seeing a comment that says, no, it doesn't. And I'm happy to provide links, or maybe John and Lee can provide that to the CAC, to the documents that have the requirements.
Kirsten, that is more direct because I disagree with you, Norma. The numbers are there. They're in the documents, and it is evident how much you have as a condition to closing you have to get from public financing. It's right there. It's 10s, 20s, $41 million for, I think, for the affordable housing. It's a condition you get from public, but the numbers are there. They're not up in the air. And it's a condition to closing of the purchase agreement that you get those. But Laura, I don't have those memorized either. I'm like Kirsten. I'm sitting here having looked at those numbers 6 months ago, and I can't remember what they are either.
Right.
Is that correct, Kirsten? I mean, the numbers are there.
Yes, they are in the documents.
They're in the
And as I said, we can provide links to the CAC via city staff.
As I recall, Laura, the huge number is that as a condition to closing, the developers have to be able to get public financing for a certain amount. And that's a huge number. So a lot of the actual financing of this project is not coming out of money from the developers. It's coming out of public money. And that's one of the reasons we objected to the project originally, is because so much is coming out of the public money and not a lot out of the developer's project. And that's why we objected to the purchase price of the property, because of that. But that's history. We lost our objections. And but the numbers are there, Laura, and I can get them for you later on if you'd like them.
Okay. Last chance for public comment. I don't see any hands raised. So with that, I will call this meeting adjourned. And
John, do we know what month it's in?
Sorry?
Do we know when the next meeting is or what month it's in, just for our own?
Is that what you were going to ask also, Amy?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to ask.
I believe it's next month. I think we have two more, at least one more meeting, maybe two more.
So SFMTA can come in April. Is that?
We don't have a meeting date for the next meeting yet. That's something that I would love to follow up with the members on via email. We were thinking April or May probably, but the SFMTA will come to the next meeting, yes.
I agree with John. I think it's crucial that we talk to the MTA.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I move we adjourn.
And
Second.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, John, and thanks to everyone for attending and participating as always.
Yeah.
Good to see you all.
Thank you, Lee. And I guess the super